We are setting out on a mission to decode this hidden language of the professional workplace.
Oh, absolutely. Because the reality we have to confront is that these phrases are the true operational currency of the modern office.
Yeah, they aren't just casual slang that you can ignore.
No, not at all. They are the actual mechanisms of how work gets delegated, discussed, and finished.
Right. So we're tailoring this deep dive specifically for you, the intermediate English speaker who is ready to navigate professional environments without that constant nagging fear of miscommunication.
It's going to be so helpful.
Okay, let's unpack this. Think of phrasal verbs like the cheat codes to corporate fluency. Or better yet, they're the connective tissue of the language.
That's a great way to put it. Because traditional English teachers often skip over them. They teach you formal verbs like commence or investigate.
Yeah, and they just assume you'll naturally pick up the conversational phrasal verbs out in the wild.
But in a fast-paced meeting, lacking those exact cheat codes leaves you completely stranded.
Completely. So we're going to walk through the 12 absolute most essential phrasal verbs following the natural life cycle of a project. Because, I mean, before you can do any actual work, you have to initiate things.
Right. Which brings us to the very first phrase, kick off.
Kick off.
Yeah, it literally means to start or launch something. And to understand why we use it, you just have to look at its origins in American football.
Oh, right, the literal act of kicking the ball to start the game.
Exactly. The energy is explosive, it's an event. And regardless of the industry you're in, or whether anyone in your office even likes sports, it's completely standard.
It really is. It signals the official beginning of a project, a meeting, or some major initiative.
And what's really helpful to note is why we use this instead of the alternatives.
Yeah, because a really common tendency for language learners is to translate directly from their native language, right? They'll say, let's open the meeting, or let's start off the meeting.
People will absolutely understand you, but it lacks that insider polish. Kickoff is the accepted standard.
Like imagine sitting down at the conference table. The leader might say, let's kick off the meeting with a quick update from each team.
Or you'll hear it constantly in planning contexts. A project manager might announce, we're planning to kick off the new marketing campaign next Monday.
Yeah, it provides a clear, undeniable starting line. And it also functions as a great transition mechanism, too.
Oh, for sure.
You might hear someone check the room by saying, before we kick off, does anyone have questions from last week?
It just clears the air before the actual work begins. And we should definitely mention that it operates as a noun, too.
Right. People will talk about scheduling a project kickoff. Or they might drop you a message saying, I'll send the agenda before the kickoff call.
So the project is officially alive, the meeting is kicked off. But, well, we all know what happens next.
Oh no. You send an email asking a colleague for crucial data, and you hear absolutely nothing back. Just crickets.
The worst. You have to ask them again, but you have to do it without ruining the working relationship.
Exactly. And that leads us to phrase number 2, follow up.
Man, this has to be the single most used phrasal verb in all of professional English.
Without a doubt. To follow up means checking on something after an initial action, conversation, or email.
Right, you do this to ensure things are actually moving forward or to finally get a response you've been waiting for. The brilliance of it is entirely rooted in office etiquette.
It acts as an interpersonal shield. If you send a request and someone ignores it, you can't simply reply and state, I am writing again about my previous email.
Oh gosh, no. That phrasing comes across as an accusation. It sounds aggressive and, like, inherently impatient.
It basically translates to, why are you ignoring me? Which puts people completely on the defensive.
Exactly. Follow-up is your polite, highly organized alternative. It frames you as thorough and diligent rather than demanding.
Let's look at how this weaves into everyday conversations. You might reassure a coworker by saying, I'll follow up with the client after the meeting.
Yeah, it shows you're taking ownership. Or if you're delegating a stalled task, you'd ask, can you follow up on that invoice? We haven't heard back.
It removes the emotion from the delay. It just turns it into a simple process.
And here's that polite email shield in action. When you reply to your own ignored message, you type, I just wanted to follow up on my email from last Thursday.
Right. It gives them the benefit of the doubt, implying maybe the email just got lost in the shuffle.
And it's just as prevalent as a noun, isn't it?
Definitely. Teams are constantly saying, let's schedule a follow-up call for next week. Or they'll reference a follow-up meeting or send a follow-up email to document things.
Okay, but what if you don't need something specific, but you just want to maintain the relationship? That brings us to our third phrase, touch base.
Yes, touch base. This is a phrase designed for brief check-ins.
Like you might catch a colleague in the hallway and ask, can we touch base before the presentation?
And managers use this heavily to monitor workflow without micromanaging. A team lead might say, I'll touch base with the design team and see where they are.
It sounds so collaborative. It's also great for soft scheduling, like, let's touch base at the end of the week.
Or when you just want to ensure everyone is aligned. I just wanted to touch base and make sure everything is on track.
But hang on, let me push back on this for a second. How is touch base actually fundamentally different from follow-up? Because to my ear, they sound like they accomplish the exact same thing.
What's fascinating here is the subtlety of the psychological intention. They're siblings, but they're not twins.
Okay, how so?
You follow up when you need a very specific response. There's an action item on the table that you are actively waiting for.
Right.
But you touch base generally. You touch base to connect, to share a quick update, and to simply confirm that you are both operating from the same assumptions.
Ah, I see the distinction. So if I need the Q3 budget numbers from you so I can finish my report, I am following up. But if I just want to grab a coffee and see how you're feeling about the new software rollout overall, we're touching base.
That captures it perfectly. Both are essential staples of your inbox, but they serve entirely different interpersonal purposes. One drives an action, the other maintains the relationship.
Wow, that distinction alone will save people so much awkwardness. Okay, so the meeting is underway, the project is moving, but inevitably, you hit an obstacle.
You always do.
Someone brings up an incredibly complicated question that threatens to derail the entire agenda. How do you handle the flow of the room? You use our fourth phrase, circle back.
Circle back means returning to a topic at a later point. Think of it as your ultimate managerial defense mechanism.
Because when someone asks a hyper-specific question in a broader meeting, engaging with it means getting bogged down. But ignoring it makes you look dismissive.
Right, so you deploy this phrase to save face and save time. You look at them and say, that's a great question. Let me circle back to you on that after I check with finance.
Boom. You validated their question, but you neatly pushed it off the table so the meeting can proceed.
It is equally effective when the clock is the enemy too. If you have 2 minutes left, you announce we're running low on time. Let's circle back to this point in our next meeting.
And it works for managing your own individual workflow too. You can tell a client, I'll circle back with Sarah once I have the numbers.
Or if a colleague catches you off guard with a complex idea, you just say, can we circle back on this tomorrow? I need to look into it more.
This actually creates what I consider the holy trinity of corporate survival. Think about the life cycle. You kick off a project to get it breathing, you touch base to make sure it's healthy, and you circle back on the messy parts to keep it moving.
I love that. But that life cycle requires someone to actually shoulder the burden of the work, which introduces our next critical phrase, take on.
Phrase number 5.
Yes. To take on means to accept a new responsibility, to hire someone, or in some context, to actively compete against a rival.
I always visualize this as carrying plates at a massive buffet.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Yeah, like when a manager looks at you and asks if you can take this on, they aren't just asking about your skills, they're looking at your metaphorical hands and asking about your plate's capacity.
Right.
Will handing you this new project cause you to drop the 3 other things you were already carrying?
That metaphor illustrates the capacity issue beautifully. If you have empty space on your plate and want to prove your ambition, you might volunteer by saying, I'd like to take on the Henderson account if that's possible.
Or you might hear a company boasting about its growth, saying, we're taking on 3 new clients this quarter.
It can also describe a permanent shift in duties, like she took on the role of project lead when Marcus left. But the real test is when that manager asks you directly, are you able to take on any additional work this month?
Right, and here's where strategy matters. If you have the time, the natural enthusiastic response is, absolutely, I can take that on.
But what if you are drowning in work? You cannot simply say, no, I won't do it.
Right, you manage the expectation. You say, I'd love to take that on. Can we discuss timing? My plate is fairly full right now. It protects your boundaries while showing a willing attitude.
Beyond delegating tasks, take on applies to structural business moves too. It relates to hiring, as in we're taking on 2 new engineers next month.
Oh, and it's used aggressively to describe market competition, right? Like the startup is taking on some of the biggest companies in the industry.
Exactly. So the work is delegated and being executed. Eventually, we have to bring these discussions to a close. The 6th phrase we use is wrap up.
Wrap up. It simply means to finish or conclude an activity.
The psychology here is about mental preparation. It functions as a gentle, natural warning that things are coming to an end.
Because if you're leading a meeting and you abruptly say, "We are done," it feels jarring, almost rude.
Right. Wrap up lets the room exhale and prepare to transition. It softens the exit. You glance at the clock and say, let's wrap up the meeting. We're almost out of time.
It's also incredibly useful for communicating your own operational timeline to others. Like, I need about 10 more minutes to wrap up this report.
Or looking at the macro timeline of a huge initiative, you'd say, we're wrapping up the project by end of quarter.
You can also use it to pull people away from their desks, like, can everyone wrap up what they're doing and join the call?
And definitely keep an ear out for the noun form, which is standard for the final segment of an agenda. Before we get to the wrap-up, any final questions?
Think about how powerfully these first 6 phrases stack together in real time.
Yeah.
Let me tell you this story about my friend Diana.
Oh, let's hear it.
Imagine it's Monday morning. Diana is leading a vital 11-minute check-in meeting. She has a tight agenda. She doesn't walk in and timidly say, let's begin. She walks in, sets her coffee down, and says, okay, everyone, let's kick off.
Strong start.
Immediately, she needs an update from the Berlin office, but she doesn't want to sound like a dictator. She points to Marcus. Can you follow up with Berlin about the contract? Marcus gets it. He promises to touch base with them that afternoon. Then, someone raises a massive, complicated issue with the website redesign. Instead of letting the meeting spiral, she shuts it down politely, saying, let's circle back on Thursday when we have the full picture.
Wow, crisis averted.
Exactly. She then looks at the room for volunteers who can take on the social media side of the launch. A hand goes up. She checks the time. Great. Let's wrap up there.
In less than a dozen minutes, she utilized those exact phrases to direct traffic, assign tasks, and protect the schedule without ever sounding aggressive. It is a masterclass in professional pacing.
Right. But once that workflow is organized, the focus shifts to the actual creation of the deliverables and, crucially, getting permission to use them.
The building phase requires specific language. The 7th phrase we rely on here is put together. This means creating, compiling, or assembling something from various parts.
This is a vital reputational tool. If your boss asks for a market analysis and you reply, I made a report, it sounds slightly elementary, almost like a school project.
Yeah, put together elevates your status. It implies that you curated data, consulted multiple sources, and intelligently unified them into a cohesive narrative. It demonstrates active initiative.
It sounds incredibly capable. A manager won't ask you to create a summary. They'll lean on your desk and ask, can you put together a report on last quarter's results?
Or highlighting an urgent deadline like, we need to put together a proposal by Friday.
You can use it to praise a colleague's efficiency, too. She put together an incredible presentation in under 2 hours.
It even applies to assembling human capital. We're putting together a team to handle the new account.
This is a phrase that dominates written communication. You will type it into emails constantly. Please find attached the deck I put together for tomorrow's meeting.
Or in a casual instant message, I put together some notes on what we discussed. Want me to send them over?
So you've put together this brilliant deck. The work is done. But you can't just publish it. You need the language of authority. You need someone to sign off on it. Phrase number 8.
Yes. To sign off on means to give official, formal approval. Mastering this phrase is your map to navigating office politics. It reveals the invisible power dynamics in the room by identifying who actually holds the authority to say yes and release the budget.
You might have a great idea, but you have to acknowledge the hierarchy. I need the director to sign off on this budget before we proceed.
Or ensuring compliance is met. Has legal signed off on the contract yet?
Once the CEO signs off on the plan, we can move forward. It's also how you establish the limits of your own authority to your team. Like, I can sign off on expenses under $500, anything above that needs the CFO.
I do want to issue a quick warning about a completely different context for this exact phrase, though. You have to listen carefully to the situation.
Oh, right.
If a coworker tells you Sarah has signed off for the day she'll respond tomorrow morning, they do not mean Sarah approved a document. In a scheduling context, signing off means logging out of the computer and finishing work for the day.
That is a crucial distinction. Now, what if the thing you need them to sign off on is a bit controversial? You have to introduce the idea carefully. That's where phrase number 9 comes in, bring up.
Bring up. It means to introduce a topic into a discussion. And it is a thoughtful, diplomatic alternative to simply saying mention.
Diplomacy is key here. When you want to inject a new, potentially sensitive issue into a crowded agenda, saying, bring up signals that you are raising the issue intentionally.
Right. You aren't just blurting out a random thought, you are calculating its relevance. It frames you as a strategic thinker.
Like, I wanted to bring up the issue with the timeline before we go any further.
You can use it to elevate someone else's contribution too, which builds great goodwill. Someone brought up a really interesting point in the last meeting.
Or tentatively testing the waters when tensions are high is now a good time to bring up the budget concerns.
It's also excellent for validation. I'm glad you brought that up. I was thinking the same thing.
My favorite application is using it as a conversational buffer.
Oh.
If you need to deliver bad news, you start with, I don't want to bring this up at the wrong time, but it is the ultimate polite mechanism to introduce an uncomfortable reality while demonstrating that your intentions are purely to help the project succeed.
So the uncomfortable truths have been navigated, the deliverables are built, and the CEO signed off on them. It is finally time to launch this initiative into the real world. For that, we use phrase 10, rollout.
Rollout means launching or implementing a new product, system, or policy. Crucially, it usually implies doing so in planned stages, rather than all at once.
Yeah.
I used to think of this like unrolling a giant carpet, but a better way to visualize the mechanics of a rollout is to think of a tiered water fountain.
A fountain.
Yeah, when you turn it on, the water doesn't just splash everywhere instantly. It fills the very top tier. First, maybe that's your internal beta testers. Once that is stable, it gently spills over to fill the next tier, your early adopters. It is structured, methodical distribution.
That mechanical imagery is spot on. It is designed to mitigate risk. An IT director would say, we're rolling out the new software system in phases, starting with the finance team.
HR departments use it for policy changes. The company is planning to roll out a new benefits package next year.
Or setting user expectations. The update will be rolled out to all users by the end of the month.
Or in a strategy session, you'd ask, how are we planning to roll this out across the different departments?
And you are guaranteed to hear it used as a noun to describe the event itself. The rollout is scheduled for Q3, or we're in the middle of a major software rollout.
Now, during a massive rollout, executives will inevitably ask you rapid-fire questions that you do not have the answer to. To survive that moment, you use phrase 11, get back to.
This means responding later after you have had time to gather more information. It is your ultimate escape hatch when put on the spot.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Isn't saying I'll get back to you just a corporate way of dodging the question? Like you are just avoiding giving a real answer because you didn't do the reading.
It can absolutely feel that way if overused. But in a healthy office, it achieves the exact opposite. If a VP asks you a complex data question, guessing the answer is dangerous.
Oh, definitely.
By using this phrase, you signal that you respect their questions so much that you refuse to provide an inaccurate answer just to save face in the moment.
Better to be accurate tomorrow than completely wrong today. Plus, it actively buys you the time you need to consult your spreadsheets. You project calm by saying, let me look into this and get back to you by end of day.
Exactly. It shows confidence in what you don't know. I don't have that information right now. Can I get back to you on that?
It describes third-party delays, too. She said she'd get back to us once she'd spoken to the team. Or if it's just a momentary pause while you check a file. I'll get back to that question in a few minutes.
All right, we have reached the finish line. The final phrase that pushes a project to its completion is phrase 12, move forward.
Move forward. This means proceeding, usually after an obstacle has been cleared or a decision has been finalized.
The energy of this phrase is entirely about momentum. When a meeting is stuck in a loop of endless debate, this phrase is the circuit breaker.
It signals to everyone, we have analyzed enough, the debate phase is officially over, and it is time to take action. It breaks stalemates.
Now that we have approval, we can move forward with the project.
Or, I think we have enough information to move forward.
Let's move forward with option B. It seems like the strongest choice.
Or when frustration is mounting, we've been stuck on this decision for 2 weeks, it's time to move forward.
You'll frequently encounter variations that carry the same momentum. Going forward means from this specific point onward into the future. For instance, going forward, all expenses need prior approval.
Or the way forward, indicating the single best strategic path. I think a phased approach is the way forward here. Let's put this entire toolkit to the ultimate test. Imagine it is your first time leading a massive, high-stakes project meeting.
Nerve-wracking.
Exactly. Your heart is pounding. You step to the front of the room. You don't hesitate. You look at the executives and say, good morning, everyone. Let's kick off.
Nice.
You pull up your slides. First, I want to bring up something from last week's feedback regarding the rollout timeline. I've put together a clearer schedule to address the confusion.
So professional.
You look directly at the lead developer. Before we move forward with Phase 2, I need someone to follow up with the testing team. A developer agrees to take that on, promising to touch base with them that afternoon.
Moving like clockwork.
You pivot seamlessly to the budget. Legal hasn't signed off on the revised numbers yet, so let's circle back on the full budget picture Thursday.
Handling obstacles.
A director interrupts, demanding the final client presentation. You don't panic. You say, "Good question. Let me get back to you on that by tomorrow morning once marketing clears the graphics."
Dodged the bullet.
You look around the silent, attentive room. Any final points before we wrap up? Great. Let's move forward.
By utilizing that precise vocabulary, the entire perception of your competence shifts. You transition from being a passive participant who just attends meetings into the definitive leader who orchestrates the work.
Let's cement these into your memory with a rapid-fire recap. Follow the project lifecycle. We start by kicking off, and when people don't respond, we politely follow up.
To maintain casual alignment, we touch base. And when a topic threatens to derail us, we circle back to it later.
When capacity allows, we take on new responsibilities, and when time is up, we gently wrap up the discussion.
When we curate data, we put together a presentation, and we ensure the boss signs off on the final draft.
We carefully bring up sensitive issues, and we methodically roll out the new systems.
When we lack an immediate answer, we promise to get back to them. And finally, to break a stalemate and drive progress, we move forward.
Beautiful.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, mastering these phrases isn't just an exercise in vocabulary memorization. It is about acquiring the subtle psychological levers of the workplace. Knowing these means you won't just survive in your career, you will be the one actively directing the flow of communication and strategy.
It changes your entire professional trajectory. But it also leaves me with a final thought I want you to mull over. Language is this living, breathing, constantly evolving ecosystem.
It really is.
As an entirely new generation, Gen Z and beyond continues to flood the corporate workforce, bringing their own digital shorthand and internet fluency with them. Will these 12 classic phrases remain the absolute gold standard?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right? Or will entirely new internet-born phrasal verbs eventually take their place at the mahogany conference table? Keep your ears open in your next meeting. Listen closely to the words the new hires are choosing, because who knows, maybe the professional puzzle you're trying to solve today is already changing its shape for tomorrow.